And so I'm going to start where we left off last time so that we can focus. This is not a lecture about God. It's not. I tell you what's missing. People turn to God when there's trouble. I mentioned that. And they don't give anything back. Now, if you do something for somebody, most of the time you expect them to say thank you, or you expect them to do a favor for you at some point of time. In a sense, and I'm not undermining the Lord, God is the same. He wants us to recognize Him. How do we do that? We do that with prayer. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know how to pray, and I was never taught how to pray. And a lot of people who were taught to pray when they were young got bored with it and didn't follow up on it. Prayer is not a study where you have to learn rules and regulations. Prayer is something very, very simple. It comes from the heart. It's you saying to someone that's much, 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 much greater than you, this is the mistake that I've made. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm sorry about. This is why I ask forgiveness. Now, this word forgiveness is very, very important. Because God says in the Bible, if you don't forgive other people for what they've done to you, then how can I forgive you for what the mistakes that you've made? So forgiveness is a big deal, and maybe later on sometime we'll talk about it again for a moment. Pick up where we left off last time. I think one of the important things in life is outside of what we're doing, whether we're working or teaching or learning, outside of that is something that we need to hold on to, not just when we have problems, not just when things go wrong. We need to hold on to something that's bigger than us. Now, men have pride. I had a ton of pride. And the thing that troubled me when I look back was that I let my pride get in the way of my relationship with people, and more important, of my relationship with God. I don't know why that is. I guess I just shut out everything because I was keen to prove myself, and there were reasons why I wanted to prove myself, perhaps more than most people, and I'll talk about that at some point. But the thing is that I had this great desire to be well thought of by people. And you know, when I reached the top of the mountain with a 72-foot yacht and living in staff at my home and a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Have you ever seen a Rolls-Royce Phantom? It's an amazing vehicle. It's one of the older Rolls-Royces, and I loved it. I loved sitting in the back, and the chauffeur sat in the front, and there was a glass pane between me and the chauffeur, and that made me feel very important. I am going back a few years when I was young and headstrong and conceited and deceitful, but that's where I was. And I enjoyed every minute of it. I remember one day I was driving down a road in London, and we were going slowly, hardly moving because of the traffic, and some kids threw some snowballs at my car, and I felt so offended. Can you imagine that, being offended because kids throw a snowball at your car? And that's where I was. I was not a nice person. I cared about people, but it was secondary. Primarily, I wanted to prove that I could do better than anybody that I knew. Primarily, I wanted to prove to those people who used to phone me when my dad was in hospital because he owed them a little bit of money. I mean, it was so little, but it was money. and I wanted to prove to them that I could make more money than all of them. And that was my weakness, because I had the wrong motives. I didn't speak to the right people, and I didn't do the right things. And frankly, when I went through the corporate world, there was clearly in my mind the desire to do anything that it takes in order to make more and more money. I tell you one thing about rich people, and that is they never get tired of making money. They never say, well, I've made X amount, I don't need any more for the rest of my life, let's stop. Never stops. You have that great desire. Well, I was once 12th richest person, entrepreneur in London, something like that. And I remember being offended that I wasn't in the top 10. That's how conceited I was. So that was me then, and I hope that when you've heard me out, you'll agree that I'm no longer the same person, but I hope I'm a better person now than I was then. But anyway, that's that part of the story, and it's I had all these toys, if people call them toys. They were pretty expensive toys. But I went on, and I had 86 companies, and I was on the London stock market, and I was written about in the newspapers every single day. And incidentally, and I have to tell you this, that when things went wrong for me during the huge recession in the 70s, the same people that were writing about me and saying what a wonderful person I was were the same people who said what a terrible person I was for having done this wrong and that wrong and so forth. At the end of the day, apart from your loved ones, the only thing worth focusing on in life is your relationship with your Maker.